Human civilization was forged in flame. From that first spark to the nuclear age, our mastery of fire is the defining story of our species. This journey uncovers the real timeline of how we tamed the wild element, revealing the precise moments our ancestors turned a terrifying force into the very engine of human progress. By the end, you will understand exactly how this elemental partnership shaped your world today. How did a flicker of lightning become a tool that rewired our own brains? What secret does a 1 million-year-old hearth hold about the birth of community? The story of fire is the story of us. Are you ready to trace the embers of your own past? That primal dance between fear and fascination was our first classroom. For countless generations, our ancestors watched the wall of flame advance, a terrifying force that reshaped the land in its wake. They felt its intense heat, saw the blackened earth it left behind, and surely mourned the creatures caught within its path. Yet in the smoldering aftermath, a curious scavenger would eventually approach. The warmth lingering in the soil was a comfort against the chill of night, and there, among the ashes, were the charred remains of food, offering a revelation. Meat cooked by the wildfire was easier to chew, simpler to digest, and far more nutritious. This was not yet mastery, it was mere opportunism, a fleeting taste of a power far greater than themselves. Evidence from places like Swartkrans in South Africa tells a silent story of this era. Hominid fossils found alongside burned bones and heated stones point to a crucial, yet passive, relationship with fire dating back perhaps 1.5 million years. They were not starting the flames, but they were learning to use them. They would follow a natural blaze like a temporary harvest, gathering hot coals or carrying away burning branches to extend the fire's life for a few precious hours. Fire was a fleeting visitor, a capricious gift from the skies or the volcanoes, and its disappearance meant a return to the cold and the dark. So what changed? What was the spark of ambition that shifted the human mindset from merely exploiting fire to needing to command it? The mystery of that transition, from passive user to active creator, marks the true turning point in our history. It set the stage for a revolution that would redefine what it means to be human. That threshold from passive scavenger to active curator was crossed in the deep, silent darkness of a cave. Wonderwork Cave in South Africa holds the oldest known testament to this monumental shift. Here, beneath the ground, archaeologists found a layer of ash and burned bone fragments that is 1 million years old. This was not the scattered debris of a single passing wildfire. This was a concentrated deposit, evidence of fire being used repeatedly and deliberately within a sheltered space. For the first time, fire had a designated home. This simple act of bringing fire indoors was a revolution in itself. It meant our ancestors had learned to contain the embers, to carry them carefully from one place to another, and to patiently feed them with the right kind of fuel to keep them alive. Fire was no longer a temporary visitor they had to follow. It was a resource they could manage, a semi-permanent companion. Think of the immense foresight this required. Someone had to plan for the fire's hunger, to gather wood before it was needed, to understand that this fragile, flickering light was worth the constant effort. This was not just a technological leap, it was a cognitive one. Keeping a fire alive demanded cooperation, communication, and shared responsibility. The group had to work together to protect their most valuable asset from wind and rain. Around that small, contained blaze, the very first seeds of community were sown. The embers at Wonderwork do more than illuminate an ancient cave floor. They illuminate the spark of human agency, the moment we began to build a small, warm world within the vast, wild one. a designated hearth became humanity's first classroom. The simple, daily ritual of tending the fire demanded more than just muscle. It required foresight. Someone had to anticipate the need for fuel, to gather wood long before the embers grew cold. This act of planning, of thinking hours or even days ahead, was a new kind of mental exercise. It forced our ancestors to strategize, to cooperate, and to communicate with a shared purpose. The division of labor was born here, around this flickering light, as some guarded the flame from wind while others scouted for branches. This was the cradle of society, a warm circle where trust was forged alongside tools. But the true magic happened after the sun went down. For the first time in history, darkness was no longer an end to the day. The fire pushed back the night, gifting our ancestors with precious extra hours of wakefulness. This was time not spent huddling in fear, but gathered together in a state of relative safety and relaxation. Can you picture those evenings, the flickering light dancing on faces, the shared warmth, the simple comfort of a full stomach from cooked food? In this new social arena, language would have flourished, stories were told, knowledge was passed down, and the first inklings of culture and myth were shared from one generation to the next. The hearth became the center of memory and imagination. This extended light may have even rewired our very brains. With a fire to see by, the evolutionary pressure for exceptional night vision lessened. Some scientists suggest this allowed our cognitive resources to be redirected, fueling the development of other complex mental faculties. The brain, no longer solely focused on surviving the immediate dangers of the dark, could now wander, wonder, and create. The flames did not just chase away the chill of the night. They illuminated the path to abstract thought, to art, and to the very essence of what it means to be human. The fire did not just change our environment, it changed us from the inside out. This nutritional leap fundamentally reshaped our bodies from the inside out. Raw food demands immense effort to break down, a long digestive process that limits the energy available for anything else. But cooking acts as a form of external predigestion, using heat to break down tough fibers and complex molecules. Suddenly, the energy locked in meat and tubers was released in a surge of accessible calories. This efficient energy source is what many scientists believe allowed for the expansion of our most demanding organ, the human brain. Brains are incredibly expensive to run, consuming a huge portion of our daily energy. The calorie surplus provided by cooked food may have been the crucial fuel that powered the tripling of our brain size over millennia. The physical changes did not stop there. Our ancestors' skeletons tell a quiet story of this culinary shift. Compare the robust, heavy jawbones and large molars of earlier hominins, built for a lifetime of grinding tough raw fare, to our own more delicate facial structures. As cooked food became the norm, the evolutionary pressure for powerful chewing muscles began to fade. Jaws grew smaller, teeth became less prominent. The time once spent chewing for hours each day was freed up, creating space for other activities, for social interaction, and for innovation. The hearth, as the first kitchen, did more than just warm us. It literally remade our faces. This was more than a change in menu. It was a biological and cultural big bang that set us on a unique path. The shared ritual of preparing and eating a cooked meal around a fire strengthened social bonds and solidified the group as the central unit of human life. Cooking created a new rhythm to our days, anchored by the gathering for the evening meal. But this new dependence on fire also presented a terrifying vulnerability. What happened when the rains fell and the flames sputtered out? The next great challenge was not just keeping fire alive, but learning how to summon it from nothing at all. That glowing hearth became the literal center of the world, Early shelters were not built and then a fire lit somewhere inside. They were constructed around the fire pit itself, with the hearth as the fixed, sacred center of domestic life. Its warmth was a shield against the cold, its light a beacon in the darkness, and its crackling presence a powerful deterrent to nocturnal predators lurking just beyond the circle of light. This was more than a source of comfort. It was the first line of defense, a portable piece of the sun that allowed our ancestors to claim a territory and make it truly safe. Around this nucleus, the very concept of home was born. The hearth was a multi-purpose workshop, the first true kitchen and the original factory. Here, food was slowly roasted in the embers, making tough roots edible and preserving meat. Here, tools were hardened in the fire, a process that made wood more durable and allowed for the creation of sharper, more effective implements. But perhaps most importantly, this was the stage for the most vital human activity of all, the transfer of knowledge. An elder might demonstrate how to shape a stone tool, the children watching the precise angle of the strike. The stories of the day's hunt would be recounted, the lessons from a failure shared, the myths of the stars above passed down in a hushed, flickering light. Archaeological sites from every inhabited continent tell this same story. From the ancient ash layers in European caves to the stone-lined fire pits of North America, the hearth is the most consistent and enduring feature of early human habitation. It is the universal fingerprint of a community. The rituals born around those flames, the shared meal, the collective Torah-telling, these are traditions that echo through the millennia, connecting us directly to those first gatherings. The fire did not just warm our bodies, it forged the unbreakable bonds of family and tribe, creating a new kind of warmth, the warmth of belonging. The hearth was more than a source of warmth and food. It was the first laboratory, a place where raw earth was transformed into technology. One of the earliest and most profound discoveries was that fire could improve stone itself. An ancient toolmaker might have noticed that stones left in a fire behaved differently. Certain rocks, like flint or chert, did not just blacken. When heated slowly and evenly, their internal structure changed, becoming less brittle and more predictable. This process, called thermal alteration, meant that a skilled artisan could now flake off longer, thinner, and sharper pieces with far greater control. A simple hand axe could now be refined into a razor-edged blade. A spear point could be made deadlier and more symmetrical. This was a quiet revolution in lithic technology, granting our ancestors a significant edge in hunting and survival. But the true transformation was yet to come, hidden within colorful rocks that most would overlook. A campfire might have occasionally melted a greenish stone, leaving behind a bead of strange, gleaming material. Copper, this accidental discovery would ignite an entirely new age. Through patient experimentation, early metallurgists learned to replicate this process on a grand scale. They built specialized furnaces capable of containing and intensifying the heat far beyond what a simple campfire could produce. By smelting ore in a high-temperature fire, they unlocked pure metal from its stony prison. This was the dawn of metallurgy. First came copper, then the harder alloy of bronze created by mixing copper with tin. Finally, with even hotter fires came iron. Each leap forward was powered by a greater mastery of flame. Suddenly, humanity had a new material that was tough, malleable, and could be resharpened. The fireforge gave birth to the plowshare that tamed the soil and the sword that defended the tribe. Fire had become the ultimate toolmaker, unlocking the very bones of the planet and propelling human innovation into an unstoppable new era. That primal force, both giver of life and bringer of utter destruction, could not be understood through practical use alone. Its dual nature demanded a deeper explanation, one that echoed across the spiritual beliefs of every early culture. Humanity did not just learn to control fire, they began to worship it. In the ancient Hindu Vedas, the god Agni was not merely a symbol of fire. He was fire itself, a divine being with two faces. One face was benevolent, the warm glow of the domestic hearth where food was prepared. The other was terrifying, the all-consuming wildfire that could ravage a forest. Agni acted as a messenger, carrying the smoke and essence of ritual offerings from the human world up to the realm of the gods. This idea of fire as a sacred mediator was universal. The Greeks revered Hestia, the gentle goddess of the hearth, whose flame was kept burning at the center of every home and in the public prytaneon, symbolizing the life and unity of the family and the city-state. To let Hestia's flame die out was an unthinkable omen of disaster. This reverence translated into powerful rituals that shaped human culture. People made votive offerings, casting precious objects or food into the flames as a gift to the gods. Cremation practices used fire's transformative power to release the soul from its earthly body, purifying it for the journey to the afterlife. The concept of an eternal flame, kept burning day and night in a temple, became a profound symbol of a deity's unending presence and the unbroken continuity of life itself. From the Zoroastrian fire temples of Persia to the sacred fires of the Vesta in Rome, these perpetual flames were a testament to humanity's deepest yearning. They were an attempt to tame not just the physical element, but its very essence, to capture a piece of the eternal and make it a permanent part of the human world. The story of fire is, therefore, also the story of our first attempts to answer the great mysteries of existence, using its light to illuminate not just our caves, but the very nature of life, death, and what lies beyond. The mastery of fire had now moved from the cave and the forge into the open fields. With the dawn of agriculture, humanity took the wild element and turned it into a precise instrument for reshaping the world itself. Early farmers looked upon a dense, untamed forest and saw not an obstacle but potential. They learned that a carefully managed fire could clear that land for planting in a single, transformative season. This practice, known as slash and burn agriculture, was far from a simple act of destruction. It was a calculated application of ecological knowledge passed down through generations. The fire consumed the thick undergrowth and smaller trees, but its true gift was in the ashes. Those ashes returned vital nutrients like potassium and phosphorus directly to the soil, creating a layer of incredibly fertile ground perfect for sowing the first seeds of crops. This was nature's own fertilizer, unlocked by flame. The fire also served as a natural pest control, clearing out insects and diseases that could devastate a young crop, while the open, sunlit clearings it created encouraged the growth of certain edible plants and attracted game animals with tender new shoots. This was not a one-time event. These early agriculturalists understood the rhythms of the land. After a few years of bountiful harvests, when the soil's fertility began to wane, the community would move to a new plot, allowing the old one to lie fallow and regenerate for decades. This cyclical use of fire demonstrates a profound, long-term understanding of ecosystem dynamics. They were not just living off the land, they were actively gardening it on a colossal scale, using fire as their primary tool. This application turned untamed wilderness into cultivated land, marking a fundamental shift in our relationship with the planet. We were no longer just participants in nature. We had become its stewards and its architects, using the oldest force we knew to build a new, more predictable world from the ashes of the old. But this creative power cast a long and terrifying shadow. The very element that enabled the rise of cities also held the capacity to erase them in a single night. As human settlements grew dense, with narrow streets winding between homes built of timber, thatch, and mud brick, they created the perfect conditions for an inferno. A single cooking fire knocked over in a cramped home, a stray ember carried on the wind, could ignite a catastrophe that would leap from roof to roof with breathtaking speed. Ancient chronicles from Rome and Babylon are filled with grim accounts of these urban holocausts, fires so vast they were said to be visible for miles, consuming markets, temples, and entire neighborhoods. The Great Fire of Rome in 64 AD, famously blamed on Emperor Nero, was only one of many that repeatedly scarred the ancient world. These were not mere accidents. They were existential threats that taught humanity a brutal new lesson about vulnerability. The cozy hearth had scaled up into a raging beast that could devour everything they had built. Out of this recurring nightmare came the first, desperate attempts at organized defense. Watchmen began to patrol the streets at night, their cries a warning to douse cooking fires and secure lanterns. Bucket brigades, human chains passing containers of water from a well to the blaze, became the standard response, a testament to communal effort in the face of disaster. More systematically, cities began to enact the world's first building codes. The Romans, for instance, decreed that new constructions should use more fire-resistant materials like brick and stone, and they mandated wider streets to act as fire breaks. They even created the vigiles, a corps of watchmen who doubled as a primitive fire brigade, equipped with buckets, axes, and pumps. The destructive power of fire was no longer just a force of nature. It had become a problem of engineering, of law, and of social organization. This constant dance with disaster forged a new kind of collective responsibility, forcing sprawling, anonymous cities to act like a village once more, united by the shared fear of the flame they could no longer live without. The fear of a city-wide inferno forced a new kind of ingenuity, a shift from containing fire in a hearth to carrying it safely in one's hand. This quest for portable, reliable fire led to one of history's most underrated revolutions, the invention of personal fire sources. The first breakthrough was not in making fire, but in starting it on demand, freeing communities from the desperate task of keeping a communal flame alive forever. The earliest fire-starting kits relied on pure friction. One method, the hand drill, involved a person rapidly spinning a dry wooden stick between their palms, pressing its tip into a notch on a flat wooden hearth board. The goal was to generate enough sustained, focused heat through this exhausting motion to create a glowing ember of charred dust. Another technique, the fire plow, saw a user vigorously rubbing the tip of a hardwood shaft back and forth along a groove in a softer wood base. These were not instant solutions. They required specific types of dry timber, immense patience, and practiced skill, turning fire making into a specialized art form passed down through generations. A significant leap came with the striker light. By hitting a piece of iron pyrite, also known as fool's gold, against a hard, sharp edge of flint, a person could create a shower of bright, hot sparks. These sparks were far more effective than friction embers for instantly igniting a waiting bundle of very dry, fluffy tinder, like charred cloth or certain types of fungus. This technology was a game-changer, a fire starter that could fit in a pouch and work even in damp conditions, but creating the flame was only half the battle. The next challenge was crafting a vessel to hold it. The earliest lamps were simple yet brilliant adaptations, a hollowed-out stone or shell filled with animal fat or rendered oil, with a moss or plant fiber wick laid along the edge. This simple design produced a steady, controllable flame, a tiny, personal sun that could light a path, illuminate a cave painting, or warm a pair of hands in a frigid dwelling. The Romans later refined this concept into sophisticated terracotta and bronze designs, some with multiple wicks for more light and even early lids to regulate the burn. These innovations did more than just provide light. They shattered the tyranny of the central hearth, with a reliable way to create and carry fire, humanity could now venture further into the darkness. It enabled nighttime labor in workshops, extended the working day, and made the exploration and colonization of colder, darker climates like Europe's northern reaches a tangible possibility. The ability to contain a miniature sun in a simple lamp was, in its own way, as revolutionary as the first capture of wildfire. It put the power of the element directly into the hands of every individual, turning a communal resource into a personal tool and setting the stage for the next great leap in our fiery partnership. The portable flame was a personal triumph, but its true potential was realized when thousands of such fires were concentrated into a single, roaring furnace. The quest for stronger materials demanded more than just a campfire. It required a blaze of such intensity it could unlock the very bones of the earth. This was the dawn of smelting, a process that seems almost alchemical. Early metallurgists discovered that by heating certain colorful rocks, like malachite with its distinctive green hue, in a superheated fire fueled by charcoal, they could trigger a miraculous transformation. The charcoal does more than just burn. It steals the oxygen atoms bound to the metal inside the rock, a chemical dance called reduction. What was once a worthless stone would slowly weep droplets of a gleaming, red-brown material. Copper, this was likely a discovery born from accident, perhaps when a campfire was built on top of ore-rich ground. But once witnessed, it was a phenomenon our ancestors were determined to replicate and control. They began building specialized furnaces from clay and stone, structures designed to trap and intensify heat. They learned to channel air through tires, ceramic pipes, using bellows to force a steady draft that stoked the flames to temperatures once thought impossible. This was the pinnacle of ancient pyrotechnology, a symphony of fire, earth, and air conducted by human ingenuity. The raw copper was a start, but it was soft and easily bent. The next great leap was not in extraction, but in combination. Some unknown, brilliant smith experimented by tossing a different kind of stone into the molten copper. When that new ore, rich in tin, melted into the mix, the resulting metal was far superior. It was harder, held a sharper edge, and could be cast into complex shapes. This was the birth of bronze, the alloy that defined an entire age. Suddenly, humanity had a material that could be both a deadly sword and a delicate brooch. The control of fire for metallurgy laid the foundation for civilization itself, enabling everything from the farmer's durable plow to the soldier's reliable armor. This was no longer just taming fire. This was commanding it to transmute the ordinary into the extraordinary, forging the very tools that would build the modern world. That same alchemical fire that unlocked metal from stone performed another, quieter miracle with the earth itself. It transformed soft, malleable clay into a substance that could defy time. The invention of pottery stands as one of humanity's most profound technological leaps, born from a simple observation. Someone, somewhere, noticed that a lump of clay left near a fire did not just dry. It hardened, becoming rigid and durable, even capable of holding water. This was a revelation. For the first time, our ancestors could create a perfect, waterproof container from the most common of materials. This discovery did not happen in one place and spread. It ignited independently across the globe, from the river valleys of Mesopotamia to the forests of the Amazon and the islands of Japan, marking a universal step in human ingenuity. The earliest fired clay vessels, appearing around 20,000 years ago, revolutionized daily life. Imagine the impact. A community could now boil water to make it safe, stew tough grains and roots into soft, nutritious meals, and most importantly, store surplus food for lean times. A simple clay pot became a shield against famine. It allowed for the preservation of seeds for the next planting, and the transportation of precious liquids like water, oil, or fermented drinks. This was the birth of true storage, decoupling humanity from the immediate, daily scramble for sustenance and enabling planning on a seasonal scale. But the evolution did not stop at a campfire-hardened pot. The next breakthrough was the kiln, an oven specifically designed for ceramics. By enclosing the fire and controlling the flow of air, potters could achieve temperatures far higher and more consistent than an open flame. This produced ceramics that were not just hard but vitrified, their structure fused into a glass-like state that was incredibly strong and impermeable. Within these kilns, another accident led to beauty. Minerals in the clay or ash would sometimes melt in the intense heat, forming a thin, glossy coating on the surface of a pot. This was the birth of glaze, a discovery that turned purely functional ware into art. A waterproof, decorative finish could now be intentionally applied, showcasing cultural identity and aesthetic mastery. These fired clay vessels became so essential to human life that their broken pieces now form a continuous narrative in the soil. For archaeologists, pottery shards are a fired clay timeline. The shape of a rim, the decoration on a handle, the chemical signature of the clay, all these details tell a story of migration, trade networks, and the blossoming of artistic spirit across thousands of years. A single fragment can connect a village in ancient Turkey to a palace in Egypt, tracing the invisible pathways of human connection. The humble pot, born from earth and fire, became an unbreakable record of our shared journey. Fire had become a tool, a weapon, and a material force, but for the great thinkers of the ancient world, it was something far more profound. It was a cosmic principle. In ancient Greece, the philosopher Empedocles did not see fire as just one useful element among many. He declared it one of the four fundamental roots of all existence, alongside earth, air, and water. Every object, every living thing was a temporary mixture of these eternal substances. Fire, in this system, was the active agent of change, the spark of life itself. But another Greek thinker, Heraclitus, took this idea even further. For him, the entire cosmos was not merely made with fire. It was an ever-living fire, constantly kindling and constantly going out in measured cycles. His famous statement that you cannot step into the same river twice captures this essence. Everything is in a state of perpetual flux, and fire was the perfect symbol for this universal process of transformation. It consumes, it illuminates, and it leaves nothing as it was. This was not just poetry. It was an early, brilliant attempt to find a single, unifying law behind the chaos of nature. They were using the observable properties of fire to explain the unobservable workings of the universe, from the growth of a tree to the motion of the stars. This philosophical lens extended far beyond Greece. In ancient India, the Agnihotra ritual was not merely a religious ceremony. It was a precise, daily act of cosmic maintenance. A practitioner would make an offering of clarified butter into a sacred fire at the exact moment of sunrise, believing the resulting smoke and flame carried their prayers upward, sustaining the order of the universe itself. The fire was a conduit, a tangible piece of the sun's power here on Earth, and its correct performance was essential for harmony between the human and divine realms. In these intricate systems, fire bridged the gap between myth and the first stirrings of science. It provided a framework for asking the biggest questions. Why do things change? What is the source of energy? What is the world ultimately made of? By observing how fire transformed fuel into heat, light, and ash, these early philosophers were laying the conceptual groundwork for future discoveries in physics and chemistry. They were searching for the fundamental rules of reality, and they held a flickering flame as their first and most important clue. This element of creation was also an irresistible tool of terror. The same mastery that forged bronze swords and hardened clay pots was inevitably turned to the grim art of war. A simple campfire could be scaled into a weapon of mass destruction, and ancient commanders were quick to grasp its strategic potential. The most basic application was the flaming arrow. Archers would wrap pitch-soaked cloth around their arrowheads, light them, and send a rain of fire arcing over the high walls of a besieged city. Against fortifications made of wood and thatch, the effect was catastrophic. A single well-placed shot could ignite a rooftop, and soon the entire settlement would be engulfed in an inferno the defenders were powerless to stop. But one invention took this terrifying concept to a new level, a secret so potent it safeguarded an empire for centuries. Greek fire was the napalm of the ancient world. A mysterious, sticky liquid concocted from ingredients still debated today. It was pumped through bronze tubes mounted on the prows of Byzantine warships. Upon contact with the water, it did not extinguish. It erupted, clinging to wooden hulls and the flesh of sailors, creating a fire that water could not quench. Imagine the horror of an opposing fleet watching this liquid hellfire streaming across the waves, igniting everything it touched. The psychological impact of such a weapon was as devastating as the physical burns. It sowed pure, unadulterated panic, breaking enemy formations and morale long before a boarding action could even begin. The very possession of such a technology was a statement of ruthless power, a demonstration that one civilization had harnessed the primal force of flame in a way others could not comprehend or counter. The history of warfare is not just written in steel and strategy. It is scorched into the earth by the deliberate, strategic application of the controlled conflagration. Long before the age of steam, the world already ran on fire. It was the unseen muscle behind every growing town, the relentless heartbeat of pre-industrial industry. Step into any bustling settlement, and your senses would be overwhelmed by the evidence. Your ears would ring with the rhythmic hammering from the blacksmith's forge, where fire softened iron to be shaped into horseshoes, nails, and tools. Your eyes would water from the smoke of the lime kiln, where limestone was roasted at intense heat to produce the mortar that held stone buildings together. Your nose would catch the earthy scent of malt from the brewery, where fire boiled the wort to create ale, a staple drink safer than water. This was an ecosystem of combustion. Every essential craft was a pyrotechnic art. The potter relied on his kiln to transform fragile clay into durable ceramics. The glassmaker used a specialized furnace to melt sand and ash into translucent vessels. The metalworker smelted ore in a roaring blaze, extracting the copper, tin, and iron that were the very bones of the economy. None of this was possible without a deep, accumulated understanding of how to manipulate flame. The design of furnaces and chimneys was slowly refined over generations, creating structures that could trap heat more effectively and draw air in a steady, powerful draft. This was not about brute force, but about elegant control, squeezing every bit of energy from a precious cord of wood or a sack of charcoal. This fiery foundation enabled a profound shift in human society. Because these fire-dependent industries could produce goods on a scale never before seen, they allowed for extreme specialization of labor. A person no longer had to be a jack of all trades. One could be a wheelwright, a cooper, or a cutler, mastering a single craft because they could rely on others for everything else. This specialized production fueled expanding trade networks, as goods traveled from regions known for their quality iron to towns famous for their pottery. The entire pre-industrial world hummed with this energy, a civilization built not on coal or oil, but on the ancient crackling power of burning wood. That relentless industrial fire shaping tools and towns also fueled humanity's most ambitious dream, In the secretive workshops of the alchemist, flame was not a tool for the material world, but a key to the spiritual one. These early proto-scientists believed fire was the supreme agent of transformation, the only force powerful enough to purge a base metal of its impurities and elevate it to the perfection of gold. Their quest was for nothing less than the Philosopher's Stone, a legendary substance that could grant eternal life and perform this miraculous transmutation. To achieve this, they built elaborate furnaces called athanas, designed to maintain a gentle, constant heat for months or even years on end. This was not a raging inferno, but a carefully curated womb, a controlled environment where matter could undergo its sacred evolution. Their work followed a precise, symbolic sequence, each stage dependent on the masterful application of heat. The first step was calcination, where a substance was roasted in an open fire until it was reduced to a fine, white ash. This was seen as the death of the material, the destruction of its ego, so that its pure essence could be released. Next came dissolution, where the ashes were dissolved in a liquid, and then separation, where heat was used to distill and purify the components, dividing the subtle from the gross. While their ultimate goal of creating gold was a mythical pursuit, their methods were grounded in a practical, hands-on manipulation of the elements. They were unparalleled masters of pyrotechnology, inventing and refining the very equipment that would become the foundation of the modern laboratory. The processes of distillation, sublimation, and filtration were all pioneered over their mystical fires. In their search for the elixir of life, they experimented with minerals and plants, creating tinctures and remedies that formed the bedrock of early pharmacy. Their cryptic manuscripts, filled with symbolic dragons and suns, often contain detailed, accurate notes on how to produce acids, purify metals, and create new alloys. The alchemist's furnace, therefore, was far more than just an oven. It was a powerful symbol of the human desire to master nature's most profound secrets, to reach into the very heart of creation and bend its rules. Their failure to make gold was irrelevant compared to their monumental success. They took the primal force of fire and used it to kindle the first sparks of chemistry, transforming not lead into gold, but mystery into method. The alchemist's mystical quest for transformation finally met its match in the cool, precise logic of the laboratory scale. For centuries, the true nature of fire remained shrouded in elemental mystery, but the scientific revolution demanded a new kind of answer, one based on observation and measurement. The dominant theory for decades was phlogiston, an elegant but fatally flawed idea. Proponents believed that any substance that could burn, from a piece of wood to a lump of coal, contained an invisible, fire-like element called phlogiston. When you set that object ablaze, you were simply releasing its stored phlogiston into the air. The ash left behind was considered the object's true, dephlogisticated form. It was a neat and seemingly logical explanation, but it had one enormous problem. Careful experiments showed that some metals actually gained weight after they were burned, a result that made no sense if they were losing something. How could an object become heavier by losing a substance? This paradox would be the theory's undoing. The man who solved the puzzle was the French chemist Antoine Lavoisier. He was a master of meticulous experimentation, and he designed a brilliant series of tests. He placed a substance like tin in a sealed glass jar and heated it until it burned. He carefully weighed everything before and after the reaction. Lavoisier discovered that while the tin itself gained weight, the total weight of the entire sealed system remained exactly the same. Nothing was lost. The key, he realized, was the air. A portion of the air inside the jar had combined with the metal during burning. He gave this active portion of the air a new name, oxygen. In a single, devastating blow, the phlogiston theory collapsed. Fire was not the release of a mystical element. It was a chemical reaction, a rapid union of a fuel with oxygen from the air, a process that released intense heat and light. This was a true paradigm shift, a fundamental change in how humanity understood one of its oldest partners. The mystical flame was demystified, recast as a predictable, quantifiable process. This new understanding of combustion became the very foundation of modern chemistry and thermodynamics, providing the principles needed to harness heat and work on an industrial scale. The control of fire had entered its final, most powerful phase, governed not by ritual, but by the immutable laws of nature. Lavoisier's discovery of combustion gave us the formula, but the real revolution began when we built a machine to run that formula on an epic scale. The steam engine transformed fire from a tool into a tireless worker. For the first time, humanity was not just using heat to warm a forge or harden a pot. We were channeling its explosive potential into pure, relentless mechanical force. The principle was elegantly simple, yet its implications were earth-shattering. Burn coal to boil water. The resulting steam, expanding with immense pressure, would push a piston or spin a turbine. That back-and-forth motion could then be harnessed to do the work of 1,000 men or 100 horses without ever growing tired. This was a quantum leap in our elemental partnership. The first practical engines, like Thomas Newcomen's atmospheric engine, were colossal, wheezing beasts designed for one vital task: pumping floodwater out of deep coal and tin mines. This solved a profound irony. Mines were filling with water, and the only practical pump required the very coal they were trying to dig up. The steam engine created its own fuel supply, allowing mines to plunge deeper than ever before, unlocking the vast energy reserves buried in the earth. James Watt's later improvements, most notably his separate condenser, made these machines vastly more efficient and powerful. Suddenly, the fire did not just pump water. It could drive the hammers of a foundry, power the looms of a textile mill, and spin the wheels of industry. The factory was born, a temple to the steam engine where production was centralized, standardized, and accelerated beyond all previous limits. But the true transformation came when this power became mobile. Richard Trevithick mounted a high-pressure steam engine on wheels, and the railroad was born. A locomotive could haul mountains of freight and hundreds of people across continents, shrinking time and space. On the seas, the steam-powered ship broke free from the tyranny of the wind and current, creating reliable global trade routes and reshaping the map of empires. The world suddenly felt much smaller, and the rhythm of life, once dictated by the sun and the seasons, was now governed by the whistle of a train and the schedule of a steamer. The boiler's fire became the pulsing heart of a new world, a world of speed, smoke, and steel, where the ancient element was no longer just in our homes or our forges. It was in the very motion of progress itself. The steam engine externalized the fire, but the next revolution brought the inferno inside the machine itself. Imagine containing a miniature, perfectly timed lighting strike within a metal chamber over and over again. This was the principle of the internal combustion engine, a device that traded the steady, external boil of steam for the violent, contained fury of a direct explosion. Developed in the late 19th century, its genius lay in its simplicity. It vaporized a spray of liquid fuel like gasoline or diesel, mixed it with air, and then a spark ignited the volatile cocktail. The resulting micro-explosion inside a sealed cylinder drove a piston with incredible force, and that linear motion was converted into the rotary power that could spin wheels or propellers. This was fire made intensely personal and portable. Unlike the massive, stationary steam engine that required a boiler and a tender full of coal, This new engine offered an unprecedented power-to-weight ratio. It was compact, self-contained, and could be started or stopped in an instant. The world suddenly shrank at an accelerating pace. The automobile put the power of 100 horses at the command of a single person's foot on a pedal, redefining freedom and distance. The airplane, a dream for millennia, became a reality as internal combustion engines provided the sustained thrust needed to lift a machine and its passengers into the sky. Global travel was no longer a months-long sea voyage but a matter of days. Our very perception of time and space was warped by this new mobility. The mastery of these small, rapid, and perfectly controlled explosions represents one of the most sophisticated applications of fire in our entire history. We had learned to tame the wildfire not just to warm our caves, but to pack its raw, explosive potential into a small metal block, putting the very planet within our reach. The roar of the internal combustion engine was a revolution in mobility, yet it was another, quieter fire that truly illuminated the modern world. For generations, the brilliant glow of the electric light bulb seemed to be the final victory over the open flame, a clean and silent successor. But this was an illusion. The electricity powering that bulb was, for a long time, born from the very same ancient element. The widespread adoption of coal-fired power plants in the late 19th and 20th centuries represented fire management on an industrial scale never before conceived. These colossal facilities were essentially vast, high-pressure steam engines where mountains of coal were fed into roaring furnaces. The heat turned water into steam, which spun immense turbines, and those spinning turbines generated the electrical current that would flow through wires across the countryside. The fundamental process was the same one that powered a locomotive, but its purpose was transformed. It was no longer about motion, but about creating and distributing pure energy. This centralized fire brought about a second great pushing back of the night. Electric lighting did not just replace the gas lamp or the candle, it made the darkness optional. City streets could be as bright as day, factories could operate 24 hours a day, and the rhythm of human life was fundamentally altered. The grid became the new, invisible hearth. Just as the ancient fire pit distributed warmth and light to everyone within its circle, the electrical grid distributed the energy of that centralized coal fire to millions of homes and businesses simultaneously. It powered not just light bulbs, but refrigerators, radios, and eventually the countless appliances that define contemporary life. The cozy, flickering hearth had been scaled up to encompass entire nations, its energy transformed and channeled through copper wires. Fire's role was no longer visible, but it was more central than ever, humming silently behind the walls, a transformed yet continuous thread connecting the modern world to its most primal partnership. That centralized coal fire created the modern world, but it was merely the prelude to a far more profound leap. The mid-20th century saw humanity tap into a fire of a fundamentally different order, one born not from the bonds between atoms, but from their very hearts. This was nuclear fission, the act of splitting the atom itself. In that seemingly simple act, scientists unlocked the immense energy binding the atomic nucleus, a power source millions of times more potent than any chemical combustion. The discovery was like finding a hidden sun within a grain of sand. The first controlled, self-sustaining nuclear chain reaction in 1942, achieved in a makeshift laboratory beneath a university sports stadium, marked the true dawn of this new age. It was the moment we learned to build our own miniature star, not with the gentle heat of a hearth, but with the raw, cosmic force that fuels the universe. This atomic fire promised a future of seemingly limitless clean energy, a world freed from the smoke and grime of fossil fuels. Yet that very same reaction, born from the identical scientific breakthrough, brought the terrifying reality of nuclear weapons into being. The brilliant flash over Hiroshima was the same elemental fire, unleashed without control, a stark and permanent reminder of the dual nature of our power. The subsequent development of nuclear power plants represents the ultimate extension of this ancient quest. It is humanity striving to contain that stellar fury within a concrete and steel vessel, to harness the very power of the sun for peaceful purposes. This endeavor poses profound questions that echo back to our first encounter with wildfire, but now on a global, existential scale. How do we manage a force whose waste products remain dangerous for millennia? What is our true responsibility when the energy we command can both sustain a civilization and utterly annihilate it? The atomic fire is the final, logical step in our long journey to master ever more powerful energy sources, forcing us to confront not just a technical challenge, but the very maturity of our species. That contained stellar fire now forces us to confront the consequences of our oldest companion. For 2 centuries, our industrial civilization has run on the concentrated fossilized energy of ancient forests, and we are now living in the long, global shadow of that combustion. The same chemical reaction that once cooked a meal in a cave now powers entire cities, but the exhaust from this planetary-scale fire has nowhere to go. Vast quantities of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases, trapped underground for millions of years, have been released into our atmosphere in a geological instant. This invisible blanket is thickening, trapping the sun's heat and fundamentally altering the climate systems that have nurtured human civilization for 10,000 years. The evidence is no longer a distant theory. It is the ferocity of unprecedented wildfires, the relentless rise of sea levels, and the intensification of storms. Our reliance on combustion has painted the skies of megacities with a persistent, choking smog, a direct echo of the coal smoke that once blackened London during its industrial peak. It has triggered acid rain born from the sulfur dioxide of burning coal, which once devastated forests and lakes across Europe and North America. The very practice of slash-and-burn agriculture, once a sustainable cycle for small communities, has been scaled into a primary driver of deforestation in the Amazon and Indonesia, destroying irreplaceable ecosystems. This is the ultimate paradox of our pyro-dependence. The element that gave us light, warmth, and progress now presents the gravest threat to the stability it helped us build. We are facing an environmental reckoning that demands a fundamental reimagining of our relationship with energy itself. The question is no longer how to better control the flame, but whether we can evolve beyond our need for it altogether, finding new ways to power our world without burning our future. Our screens have become the new digital hearth. Just as families once gathered around the crackling fire for warmth and stories, we now congregate in the glow of televisions and laptops, sharing entertainment and fragments of our day. This is the focal point of the modern living room, a center of gravity for connection, even if that connection is sometimes silent and parallel. The primal urge to face a common source of light and narrative is a powerful echo from our deep past. The language we use betrays this enduring legacy. We speak of igniting a conversation, of having incendiary ideas that catch fire and spread. We describe viral content as wildfire, and we still burn files onto disks. The metaphors of combustion are so deeply woven into our speech we hardly notice them, yet they reveal how fire remains the ultimate shorthand for energy, passion, and transformation. And for all our digital sophistication, the real thing still holds an irresistible pull. There is no algorithm that can replicate the hypnotic dance of flames in a fireplace or the intimate circle of faces illuminated by a campfire under a starry sky. These are places where gods come down, where stories flow more freely, and where a profound, non-digital connection is forged. The enduring power of these gatherings proves that the essence of the hearth was never just the heat. It was the shared space it created, a sanctuary for community and contemplation. The application of fire has evolved from a survival tool to a cosmic power, but its symbolic role is a constant. It remains our most ancient mirror, reflecting our enduring need for warmth, for light, and for a place to simply be together. The elemental force we first captured in a cave is now the subject of laboratories seeking to bottle a star. The next frontier in our fiery timeline is not about bigger flames, but about deeper understanding and absolute precision. Scientists are closing in on the ultimate energy source, controlled nuclear fusion. This is not the splitting of the atom, but the fusing of atoms together, the same process that powers our sun. The goal is to create a miniature, contained star on Earth, a reactor that would generate vast amounts of clean energy from abundant fuels like hydrogen, leaving behind no long-lived radioactive waste. It is the holy grail of our elemental quest, offering the promise of power without the planetary cost of combustion. Alongside this cosmic ambition, material science is refining our oldest fiery tools. Engineers are designing hyper-efficient combustion engines that squeeze every last bit of energy from a drop of fuel while minimizing harmful emissions. They are also creating revolutionary fire-retardant materials, fabrics, and building supplies that can actively resist ignition, forming a high-tech shield to protect our homes and forests from uncontrolled blazes. Even our relationship with wildfire itself is being re-engineered. Bioengineers and ecologists are now exploring how to use carefully managed, prescribed fires as a tool for ecological restoration. These controlled burns clear out dangerous undergrowth, recycle nutrients back into the soil, and even trigger the germination of seeds for certain plant species that depend on fire to reproduce. This ancient practice, informed by modern science, can help restore the health of forests and, remarkably, act as a form of carbon sequestration by promoting the growth of robust, carbon-hungry ecosystems. Looking further ahead, the future of fire may not be fire at all, at least not as we know it. It may lie in mastering plasma, the fourth state of matter, an ionized gas that makes up the stars. Plasma torches, which generate temperatures hotter than the surface of the sun, are already being tested to instantly vaporize municipal waste, turning trash into harmless gas and inert slag. The same technology could one day provide the superheated thrust for advanced spacecraft, propelling us to the outer planets. The story of taming the wild element is far from over. It is simply entering a new, more sophisticated chapter where our command over this primal force becomes a matter of sustainability, stewardship, and our continued voyage into the unknown. Our journey through the real timeline of fire reveals a story not of conquest, but of profound co-evolution. We did not simply tame a wild element. We entered into a partnership with it, a relationship that has, in turn, shaped every facet of our existence. The flickering light in a cave rewired our brains for complex thought. The warmth of a shared hearth forged the bonds of community. The heat of the forge unlocked the metals that built our world, and the contained inferno of the steam engine powered our greatest leap into the modern age. Each step of mastery, from carrying that first ember indoors to splitting the atom itself, unlocked new powers and inevitably presented us with new and weightier responsibilities. This entire timeline stands as a powerful testament to human curiosity, our resilience in the face of the unknown, and our boundless ingenuity. Now, as we stand at a critical crossroads defined by climate change and a new technological revolution, the ancient lessons from our long partnership with fire ring with urgent clarity. The very same flame that warmed our ancestors in the depths of time still lights our way forward, a timeless reminder that the future, like fire itself, is not a force to be dominated, but a delicate balance we must learn to tend with profound